Okay, let us go ahead and get ourselves a very good question came up at the break, and let's kind of share that with you all. It's this whole notion of really, can you go through and with your extrusions round the corners, kind of give a little more nuance? And you'll see that on my little couch here. I did go through and change some things around at the break. Let's see, I'll show you how that's done. For this extrusion, you can edit it if you want to. And there's a really nice tool that gives you the ability to do that. Under the different drawing tools, we have all the things for just drawing new form. We also have something called the filleting tool. The filleting tool just introduces a rounding to a corner. So if I want to, for example, round off the back of the cushion, I can sort of put some sort of rounding in here. And the nice thing is that'll actually be honored, the rounding off to 6 feet or 6 inches. Now, you could go ahead and actually put a parameter on that if you want to give even more control to control the degree of rounding, a very tight corner versus a very sharp or smooth corner, whatever you like. I'm going to keep it simple for now. Just kind of, yeah, so don't overly complicate it, but you know, kind of add nuance where you want it to be. You won't hardly see the one on the back. Now, another interesting question that comes up out of that is, for example, this worked in terms of the lower couch cushion, in terms of rounding the corners there, because we were extruding up from the browns. If I wanted to round off the tops of the cushion, so on that back, if I wanted to go through and round off that corner here, or this corner here, that might have been a reason why I draw the extrusion in the other direction. Because when I do that rounding, I have to do it in the direction of the extrusion, or to the profile that's extruded back. So, you know, there's all these different choices. You have to sort of plan ahead where you might want to add the rounding or the nuance later. For example, if I wanted to put some holes in these arms, kind of cutting through, it might have been better to extrude them from the side as opposed to extruding them up from the bottom, because you always got to think about how you best adapt the profile to make that in there. Okay, so we're not doing too bad here. Let's just go ahead and add a few more things to this to kind of complete our model. I want to control the issue of the heights a little bit, because right now all these heights are just manually locked in there. I sort of put in that it was 4 inches off the ground, 16 inches to the cushion. I think I put 24 inches on the arm height and 3 feet for the top of the back cushion. So I got 4 fixed manual dimensions in there. And they'll always be honored, but if I want to give myself a little parametric control, what I'm going to do is just go to the elevations and do a very similar thing. Just like what I've been doing in the plan view, I'm going to add some reference planes over there. So let's show you what I mean. We'll go over to that front view. You can sort of see my reference planes there. And what I'm going to do is just add some different reference planes. I'm going to add 4 different reference planes: the top of the cushion, the top of the arms, the top of the seat, and the bottom of the seat. And we'll figure out which of those we want to add as parameters. So we'll create a reference plane. Again, I'm going to offset them a little just so I can stretch the geometry to them. So I'm kind of putting them a little bit above where I want them to be ultimately. So again, I've just put 4 lines across there for those 4 different things I want to control. Let's start adding some dimensions. Like, oh, this whole issue of the top of the back, the height of the back, that I'll probably put a dimension on, because that's something I want to be able to control explicitly. Is it 3 feet or 4 feet, or just how high is the back of the chair or the back of the cushion? I'll stretch from that line down to the reference level. Was that? Oh, am I doing the wrong thing? Yeah, aligning. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm aligning. Correct. From there. Oops. Oh, you're right. Yeah. Thank you. Always catch me on stuff like that. You'd be surprised how often what's going on in my brain and what's going on in my fingers aren't the same thing. So, yes, thank you. The morning class is very good at that. They catch me on things, and the first time you say it, I won't hear it right. It doesn't quite register. So, yeah, you say, no, 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 you really need to pay attention. Yeah, and I'll get it eventually. Okay, there we go. That's going to be, I'm going to call that just the back height. Add a parameter. I'll call it the back height. Again, I can decide whether that's an instance or a like a type parameter. I will align from this and lock the top of the back to that. Next up, I'm going to add an align dimension from the top of that reference plane to here. I'm going to call that the arm height. And again, I'll do some aligning. I'll align from this reference plane to the top of that, lock that in there. Okay. Now you sort of have a choice. We could say, oh, I'm going to dimension to the seat cushion top, and then just give it a fixed distance to the bottom of the cushion. Really sort of a choice, whether you want to give yourself a flexibility or not. There's a number of ways you could do that. I'm going to say seat cushion top and maybe seat cushion width or depth, something like that, to kind of, I could do that a number of different ways. So I will go from this to the reference plane. Let's put it over on this side. And I'm going to actually just dimension from here to there, as opposed to up from the bottom. Because I sort of think of that as being a 6-inch cushion, regardless of where the height actually ended up. So this is going to be called, add a parameter, seat cushion top. And this guy over here, I'm just going to make it a sort of a flat 6 inches for now or something like that. I could add a parameter to it. I'm just going to do it a little, or 8 inches. Make it a little different. So once again, I got some parameters. They're looking pretty good right now. Actually, what I should do is flex. I like to flex a little bit. So let me take that back height, and I'll make that 4 feet tall. See if that one does what I want it to. Looking pretty good. Let me take that arm height. Let me make him 2'8" tall, and I'll apply that. Looking pretty good. Okay there. Then finally, I'll do those last alignments. I'll do the that to the top. In this lower reference plane, I'll lock to the bottom over there. Kind of an interesting thing here. You actually sort of see through the object here. What you're looking at, that line right there, that's the bottom of the back. So I should lock that to the same dimension too. So what I do? I'll choose that line and I'll lock the bottom of the back cushion to that. Okay, now we're looking pretty good. Let us see how we're doing. So again, shrink that up a little. This dialog is always bigger than you want it to be relative to what I'm doing right now. Okay, so for the back height, let's just try it. We'll make it 5 feet tall. We'll make it 8 feet. It's going to grow. The arm height, make that 2 feet tall. The seat cushion height, I'll just make that 1'4". Pop it back down. Looks like the 8 inches growing with it. Let's go ahead and make it 3 feet tall or 3'6". Okay, now the cushion's actually flying. They're flying above the arms. Yeah, we may or may not want that. We may want to do something to kind of constrain that so the arms have to grow too. But for right now, we'll let that be. Yeah. One thing you have to start thinking about on your parts as you go through them is there are some boundary conditions where they start breaking, and you have to kind of just start controlling that. Yeah, for this first assignment, we're not going to test them that way. We're not going to beat them up and put them through the acid test. But in the long run, if you're distributing things, it'd be great to put some constraints in there. For example, here's something that's a hard thing to do. If the seat, if the length of the couch is 6 feet, okay, and the arm width is 3 feet, it basically starts complaining. And the problem is, if I do the 6 feet and the 3 feet for the arm width, there's no cushion left over, something like that. So we start having problems where the constraints just can't be satisfied because of the dimensions we put in there. Let me go ahead and just make the arm width 1, and then it's going to be fine. So there's different things where you can sort of get yourself in trouble. Another thing, I could put in there that the arm width is 5 feet on a 6-foot couch. Okay, once again, it's going to give us some sort of dimension, just basically telling, I don't know how to create geometry given the values you're given. So we can put some controls in to stop that from happening, but in general, that's what's going on. So just watch out for that as we go. Okay, so we got some stuff. This is looking pretty good. We got this basic couch. It's pretty nice. Let's save it away. We can load that into our project and we're ready to go. Now, this couch is actually not too awfully bad. We might want to go through and, just give it a little more power. You might notice that this couch is kind of very boring right now. It's kind of this gray material. And, that's probably not what we have in mind. I think a lot of you struggle with that a little bit. As you're putting furniture into your houses, you wanted to kind of make it different colors, the right kind of wood, the right kind of fabric, things like that. And sometimes when you bring things in from other library parts, they just don't have a nice material assigned to it. So assigning materials is a good thing. You'd like to be able to assign materials. So let's talk about that one first. And then we'll talk about the issue of how we can go through and actually make them a little smart about how to respond to sizes and dimensions and things like that by using formulas. So here's the deal with materials. Every piece of form has some sort of material to it. And if you don't explicitly assign a material to it, you get something called the default material for that family type, or that category, excuse me. So there actually is something called the default furniture material, and it's just this plain old gray. And there's a default casework material, which is plain old gray. There's all these default materials. And that's okay. You can go through and change it on your project. You can say that, if the furniture doesn't have a color, make it oak colored. Okay, and all the things that don't have anything explicitly assigned to them will pick up that oak coloring. Okay, so default's not so bad. But if you want to have finer grain control, you can go ahead and take it one step further and start assigning materials. But if I choose any of those pieces, for example, I'll choose those little guys on the side, you'll see the material is just listed by category. So what does that mean? For the furniture category, it's going to be whatever the default material is. Now, if you don't want that, and you want to have some more control over the material, you can assign some materials. And let's show you how that works. So it all starts with the notion of choosing that guy and say you want to assign a material. And assigning material works by going in the properties panel, and where it says by category, there's a little button just to the right-hand side. Click that little button. It'll bring up the material. Oops, I'm sorry. I guess I'm hitting the wrong one. Don't hit the button. That's coming in a minute. Just choose the actual thing that says by category, and a little button pops up in there. Okay, and you'll see there are some different materials sort of set up over here. So in terms of these different materials, let's just kind of think about how this is set up. There are some materials in this part already. There's glass, default wall, default roof, light source, things like that. If you want to go through and choose some materials to put in here, you can. We can either sort of define our own materials, or we can pull some sort of material out of the library here. And let me kind of show you where that is, because you may not see that just yet. Close that up. Go to Autodesk Materials. Actually, let me see how this is actually defined on yours, because I know yours doesn't look like this at first, because it's not the way it looked on mine either. This list was very small down here. Does it look like that? Something like that? Pretty tiny? Pardon me, I'm gonna look at one of yours for a second so I can give you the right directions. There's nothing down there. Well, we can't have that. Okay, click the guy right there on the end. Yeah, try that. And let's say open an existing library. That's interesting.
Mine was just like an icon at the top in that bar that says project materials. Yeah. The square icon.
Oh, okay. And is there a choice to go through, and if you pull down where the little home is, do you see any sort of other choices in there? Okay, that's the first. Okay, and then you have down there. Okay, that's actually, you're looking pretty good in terms of what's going on. I'm just saying how it's. Okay, you're looking pretty good. We have the materials down there on your machine. Yeah, how about you? Okay, there again, you don't have it there.
It second.
You have to click this.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, right there? Ah, thank you. Okay, so if you don't see the little materials browser, up here where it says project materials, you can either turn that on or turn that off. And this brings up a little browser pane that lets us choose some existing materials. So let's talk about the materials that are in here. You can define a completely new material or choose one of the ones that's in the browser already defined. The nice ones in the browser that are already defined is they have appearances associated with them already. You can create a brand new one and put your own photograph in there. We can find things on the internet and bring in JPEG images of fabrics we like, materials that we like the appearance of. But as a starting point, let's just go ahead and pull some stuff out of the library. So again, we'll click this little guy to kind of bring up that lower pane, and we can choose some materials. Let me go ahead, I'm just going to put some sort of wood in here like oak for these. This is the arms. If I want to choose it, I can either double click on it and it pops it up to the top of the list. I could also click that little guy that says add the material to the document. Either one will work. Let's talk about how the materials work. The material has some physical properties, it has some appearance properties, and the appearance properties are the ones I'm sort of most interested in now. It has an image, it kind of has a background color to it. I can change that from a semi-gloss to some sort of other type of finish if I want to. There's really a lot of control over materials. But I can bring that appearance in. Another thing you can do is, if we don't want things to show up as this is default gray, you can click this checkbox that says Use Render Appearance, and that'll take, kind of the predominant color of the rendering image and use it as the single color to represent the object. So if I say use it, it's decided that the most predominant color is kind of this brown tone. Okay, so bring that on here in here. So I've chosen, so what have I done? I've basically chosen that extrusion for the arms. I've said, let's grab a material. I've gone to the materials and chosen a predefined material. Okay. And now when I say OK to this, okay, they have that brown appearance. If you want to see that even more closely, I can say realistic. And if you go zooming on in there, you'll see it has a little bit of wood grain to it. Not too bad. Okay, next up, let's attack the issue of those cushions. Those cushions need a little bit of help too. Okay, they have their own funny material. So we can go through and choose the cushions. I could choose one or two. If I want them to be the same material, I could choose both of the cushions and do it at the same time, or I can choose them independently. I'm going to choose this one and that one. Control click to get them both. They currently have just, that boring material. It's the default furniture material. It's just this big gray blob. So if I would like to choose a material for those, I can go pop it on out. Let's see what we have in mind here. What do I have in here? This morning we went for leather. Let's see if I can find that. Linen white, leather dark brown. We could use that as a starting point. I'll just double click on that. It's leather dark brown, and I'll again say use the render appearance to give it that kind of brown color. Now, if you don't like leather dark brown, we can actually go through and give it a slightly different color. We can start changing the image, but let's kind of leave it as dark brown for right now. Okay, so I have two different materials, and I say okay. And now, let me see if I can actually, well, you can sort of see it there. Can you see that the rendered appearance, the wood actually has grain, and the leather actually, you see it's not a solid brown, it's kind of this skin-like brown. There's a little texture, a little bump mapping to it. It's not going pretty, it's going to look pretty good when it gets done rendering. Let me zoom out, zoom out. Okay, does your seat have some materials on it? Can you put some in there? If you have, go ahead and load it back into the project. Save it away and load it back in there. And let's see what it's like to be a user of your part. So I'm going to load it back into the project. I'm going to say overwrite the existing one. Hopefully those are going to turn brown. Okay, looking pretty good. Let me make those realistic so you can sort of see the appearance. Now, these aren't too bad. Here's what I've done so far. I've gone ahead and assigned the material to these things. I did it. I'm the author of this thing. I gave it to you. You picked it up. You have this thing that has brown leather and these wooden arms. You think, oh, that's kind of okay, but it may not be exactly what you have in mind. So if you want to change that, you go over here, you choose that object, you say, no parameters there. Let's look at the type parameters. No type parameters. I am hosed. I can't really change this very, very easily. I'm sort of stuck. And this is how you, when you pick up a lot of things out of like other people's libraries, they don't always give you parameters for things you'd like to change. Okay, so you may need to go and add parameters to them to give you that flexibility to change it. Now, it turns out these objects do have materials. Where they're getting them from is, I said it should be wood oak, and I said it should be brown leather, so I could go in and change the appearance of brown leather in the project, but that would change brown leather everywhere. Or wood oak, it wouldn't be quite right to do it that way. So if I'm being nice and I'm giving you this, I will not only give you this part that has my predefined materials, I'm going to give you the choice of changing the materials. Okay, and how would you do that? If I want to give you the option of changing something, I need to add a parameter to it. Okay, that you can go through and make that change pretty easily. So we get where we're going? Okay, so materials are good. You've pulled these things in. Someone's given you this fantastic part. No flexibility. You want flexibility. So we're going to go back and add a parameter. Coming on over here, back over to that cushion or that couch. Okay, we're doing so good. This is actually looking not bad at all. Okay, pretty good. We are going to take that couch and those wooden arms, and I got this nice wood oak material, and that's not too bad. But if I would like to give you the ability to change the arm material, I'm going to give you a parameter instead. And here's how you do it. Oh, I almost went there by mistake a little while ago with that little button off to the right-hand side. And here's what happens. If you click that little button, you get this dialog that says, oh, you'd like to add a parameter to this thing. It's actually the same thing I did a while ago when I made this visible parameter. I'm going to change the material, make it a parameter. Let's say add a parameter to it. Oh, what's that going to be? It understands, because it's a material property, that's going to be a type parameter. The type of the parameter is going to be a material choice. It understands that. I can decide whether I want to make this a type or an instance parameter. Let me go ahead and make this. This is going to be the arm material. Now, just because of the way I am, I tend to actually like to make materials instance parameters so you can change them pretty easily. So one chair could be blue fabric, the other chair could be white fabric. I just kind of like to have that flexibility. So again, it's just a choice whether you want it to be instance or type. Okay, that's going to be the arm material. Okay, if you got that, I know that you are going to be able to do this. Control. Let's make that a parameter, and I'm just going to call that the cushion material. Again, make it an instance parameter. Say OK to that. So I got two different parameters. Yeah, I'm even going to get really wild and crazy here. And since I like this thing so much and I rounded the corners in the back, I'm even going to give you the option of turning off that back cushion or not. Whether you need to have that. And that's real easy. Again, like what I did with the cabinet, I'm going to choose the back cushion. Visibility is set right there as it's turned on right now. I can say, let's go ahead and add a parameter, and I'm going to call it back cushion visible. Notice this one's going to decide, it's a yes-no parameter. It knows that's what makes sense here. I'm even going to make that an instance parameter, so I'm just going to go crazy when I put this in my project. So what does the effect of this look like? If you go to the family types now, you'll see that, well, the back cushion available, that's down here in the other right now, just a checkbox. Up here with the materials and finishes, I have a parameter that I can change now as opposed to having to go back into the dialog and do it. What happens is, because I had specified something, it gives me that material as the default, and then the user can change it to be whatever they want. Okay, our material is the default, they can change it if they want, but they still have the option of being able to change it. And since it's an instance parameter, what will happen is that's going to be changed, just by selecting the object in the instance properties. I don't need to edit the type. I can just change it on an individual one to, every individual one can have its own different material. Okay, feel good? Excellent. Okay, let's say okay to that. We will save that away. I'm going to load that into my project, and we're getting a pretty smart looking little couch thing. I'm going to overwrite the existing one. Okay, doesn't look too different now, but if I choose one of those, you'll see I actually have some different options here. Back cushion visible. Yeah, turn that off. Back cushion back on. So now it's an ottoman. Now it's a daybed. Now it's, go ahead and, flexible objects are really good. This basic shape, you can get a lot of stuff. I can make a dining room table out of it. I can make a lot of things out of this basic shape. In terms of the materials properties, if I don't want it to be wood oak, I can choose this. And let's say it's not wood oak. Oh, I can do one of these Autodesk materials. If I want to make it steel or teak. Let's see how different teak looks. I'm curious. Apply that. It's a little bit of difference. Can you see the difference between the oak and the teak? It's kind of a redder color versus that color. It wasn't very different. Let's go back out here. I'll change it to, not teak, how about, let's see if I can find some nice birch or something. That'll be low, or I can actually make it a padded arm if I want to. I can give it some sort of change. I'm going to go to the AEC materials. There's a little more stuff out in that library. Check out the woods in there. Walnut, spruce, pine, maple, glulam. There's some nice birch. Try that. Did I get it? Looks like I didn't quite get it. No, I didn't quite change it. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. Often I get ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and go back to wood. There's birch. Oh, interesting. Let me cancel it. Looks like I did add it, but I didn't actually choose it. Does that make sense? I kind of added it in, but I didn't actually choose it. Say okay. So that's what birch looks like instead. Now for the materials, let's do the same thing. Yeah, I don't necessarily want brown leather. I can go through and I got some nice fabrics in here. For example, there's linen beige, canvas blue stripe. Let's make a nice blue stripe couch. Say okay to that. I have to choose it, get it up there. Not too bad. Or even here, let me just duplicate this. In this case, if I don't want big wooden arms, I can actually just use that canvas blue stripe. As the whole couch. So I don't know why, I like materials as instance properties. It feels pretty good to do that. But that's really the whole material story. So again, give it a material, whatever you put in there will be the default. Then if you give people parameters, they have a lot more control over this. So now as you keep modeling, when you go and you grab something out of Revit City and it's the wrong color and you just hate it and you can't stand it, blah, 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 okay, go through and add parameters to it, and all of a sudden you then have the ability to control it. But just go through and start editing the family. Okay? Beauty. Let me show you one last concept before you leave tonight, and that's this whole idea of formulas and how you tie things together. And there's really a whole very rich formula language that's available to you here, and let me kind of just give you a sense of what it's all about. formulas give you a way of just being smart about your parameters, because you can type in values. I can type 3 feet, I can type 5 feet, whatever I want. Or I can start relating things together arithmetically. I can go through and make things. So if I know that what the depth is always wants to be 1/2 of the length, I can basically set up a formula to do that. And I can do kind of simple relationships. I can do sines, cosines, logarithms, any sort of mathematical relationship you want to put between things, you can. So it's really just a matter of control. Do you want to have it linked together? Do you not want to have it linked together? Okay, and let me see if I can give you an example of how that might work. So for example, if I'm going through and creating a big old table, that again. And this table is going to have, if I use the term lazy Susan, you know what I mean by that? Like a turntable on it. Maybe better on a round table. I might want to set up a relationship between the radius of that and actually the size of the table. So for example, if the width of the table is here, I might want to say, the radius of that is never going to be any more than, I could say, well, the diameter would be 2/3, so it'd be like 1/3 of the width, whatever it is. I can set up some relationship between that. I want that to be 1/3 times width. And why would I do that? That way, as the table gets wider, the lazy Susan gets wider. As the table gets narrower, it shrinks automatically, so it always kind of fits the same relationship to it. So I can relate things together pretty easily by doing formulas. And let's just show you, I'm going to show you that relative to the little couch example. So for my little couch over here, let me go popping back over. Okay, so right now, the width and the length are really independent of each other, and that's okay. If I want to relate them together, here's how I do it. If I go through and open the family types dialog, you scooch those over so you can sort of see better. You'll see there's actually this formula field. So if I want to go through and create a formula, for example, if I want the depth to always be half of the length, just as an example, may not make much sense for a couch, but just to sort of give you an example, what I can do is say that the depth is always equal to length divided by 2. Okay, and when I do that, if the type length is 6, the depth is going to be 3. If the length is 4, the depth is going to be 2. If the length is 1, the depth is going to be 6 inches, whatever it is. Okay, and that's just a way of sort of just introducing another constraint, just giving yourself a little bit of power to do that. So wherever it makes sense to go ahead and set up a formula, go ahead and do that. Okay, so here's length, depth is 2. So again, if I change it up to now the 8-foot couch, I'm expecting the depth to be 4. So it's just a way of kind of adding some sort of relationship. The table might be a good example. Another good example where that sometimes gets used is we actually do put in formulas that make things appear or don't appear just based on the length of things. So for example, what if we had, let me give you 2 examples. One is if we have a table, this whole issue of if the table gets long, it might need more legs. Okay, so by default, it has 4 legs. But if we could sort of describe a mathematical relationship between the number of legs and how long the table is, we might be able to put together some nice formula. For some number of legs, it's actually just an array of different leg parts, and there might be 2 of them right now. Let's say that, for an 8-foot table, it's 2. For a 12-foot table, we want to have 3 legs. There's some threshold we're going to cross. We're going to add more legs to it. So I can say that, this number down here, it's not just a number. What if we actually say that it's the length of the table divided by 3 or divided by 4 feet or something like that? So that would be pretty close. We might have to go through and go just a little bit farther and say that there's an integer value of that. Okay, so it always turns out to be an even whole, something like that. We round up or round down depending on what we want to do. But we can construct a formula, and by doing something like that, if I made a 30-foot table, it would have 8 legs or 7 legs, whatever it is, or 7 pairs of legs, whatever would be necessary. So one example is there are things where as you add more and more of them, additional supports start happening. Okay, that actually happens architecturally a fair amount too. For example, if you're modeling a wall and you're putting some sort of framing in the wall, or if you're modeling the wall and you're trying to figure out how many sheets of plywood are in the wall or something like that, you can say, if, for example, if the relationship is that that's going to be 2 feet apart, we can say that, great, the number of studs, okay, the number of pieces of framing, okay, whatever that number is, number of studs is equal to the length divided by 2 feet. Okay, and what will happen then, no matter how long you make that wall, you make it 100 feet long, it'll get 50 studs, always evenly spaced or something like that. So you can do things that evenly increment themselves, okay, just by putting together formulas like this. Another example of how this gets used is in structural framing. Oh, there's all these trusses. Yeah, and they look like this. That's a bad drawing. Okay, but there's some truss. And the number of bays, the number of these individual units to kind of be repeated will depend on the total length of the truss. And again, it's done that same sort of way. We'll take the total length and we'll say the number here, even actually the way they really do it is they'll say, here's the total length. We'll say that the number is going to be, we're going to take the total length, so the number of bays is equal to the length divided by whatever the maximum distance could be for a single bay to be. It might be 2 feet, it might be 3 feet, there's going to be some maximum. It might be related to the height because you don't want them to be over, some ratio of proportionality between the height and the width. So let's say we'll make that, divided by 3 feet. Okay, so, and then what we'll do is we'll make this dimension in terms of the length of a bay is equal to just the length divided by the number of bays. Okay. Now, this is actually starting to get pretty powerful about what you're able to achieve by doing this, because you can start having, we've been doing these dumb little individual parts that don't really have much smarts into them at all. This sort of operation where we start having different increments, different numbers, all that type of stuff really happening formulaically. This is where it starts getting really, really smart and interesting. And this is really where a lot of the BIM modeling stuff is going now. It's smarter and smarter parts. So no matter what your geometry is, you have a well-defined part that can adapt itself to the precise dimensions of however you place it and go through and kind of really be very good about creating this. So we'll pick this up in terms of how to use formulas, how to do anything like that. We'll pick that up next time. That's where we'll go on Thursday at the beginning, okay? Because there's real power in that, and that really, that takes your parts really to the next level, where like when you have parts that are that smart, they're incredibly useful. So a lot of work to define, but you get a lot of mileage out of them once you do them there, okay? So, yes?
Do you want us to include formulas for the assignment?
It's not necessary for this assignment. It's like, actually, what did you say, Raj, in the assignment? Did you say about doing anything with formulas?
It's up to you.
It's up to you.
Not necessary.
It's not, okay. So with so many of these things, and it's always, you always want to do the maximum amount we show in class in the assignment. But again, you don't have to. Go ahead and you're supposed to either make 2, 3, or 4, 1, 2, or 3 parts?
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, or 3 parts. If your parts are nice and parametric, if they have just this nice stretchy behavior, I'm happy. If you go one step further and you have parametric materials, even better. If you go have any sort of formulaic relationships and have them really, you knock my socks off. I don't know what to do about that. That's real, but don't think you have to go there, okay? Because this assignment, quite explicitly, is meant to be. It's meant to be the one that's a little bit easier since you have all your midterms and everything else that's due this week. So go ahead and don't kill yourself on this one. Okay, just 3 parts. Do most of you have a good sense of what kind of parts you're thinking about, like what you're going to model? Because honestly, something like the couch, 3 parts, that's good. It doesn't need 15 parts. It could just sort of be something relatively simple. Hopefully our little couch model has demonstrated that, even though it's a pretty simple part, you get a lot of mileage out of it. Okay, so great. Let's break for tonight and adjourn, and we will see you on Halloween.